So this is a Kingston jacket that I'm making, but the same technique applies to the Amsterdam coat as well. And what I'm about to do is I'm about to fit the sleeve into the armhole. And for both the Amsterdam jacket and the Kingston, you'll find that the sleeve, it will look as if it is much larger than the armhole, and it's not going to fit. And in fact it does, but there's a couple of tips to how to get it to fit. The first thing is you need to, when you're lining up the edges, have the point of the sleeve slightly overlapping the edge of the so this is the sleeve and then this is the jacket. Have the point of the sleeve slightly overlapping so that when you stitch your seam allowance, and this is a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance because it's all flat fell seams, that it cuts here at the intersection of this V. You do not, if you line up your sleeve like this, firstly it'll go off on a funny angle at the top here, but also it'll be too large. So you need to have that slightly overlapping. So that's the first place that I'm going to pin. And then I've already pinned in the center of the sleeve here, so I'm just pinning this side to show you. And then now it looks like this is just way too big and it's not going to fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by pinning on this kind of flat bit here, and I've got my sleeve on top and the jacket underneath. And what I'm doing is I'm holding this back bit here taut, and I'm having this bit quite relaxed, and with this thumb on top I'm kind of pushing this down so that it's as relaxed as it can be on this side but as taut as it can be on the other side. And I'm just smoothing this along here with my thumb, and I'm not smoothing at the edge here. I'm not worried about any bubbles here. I'm smoothing at roughly the seam allowance, so where I'm going to actually be stitching. So see where the point of my nail is there? That's where it's going to be stitching, and so that's where I want it to be flat. And then I do the next one. So I'm keeping the back, I'm pulling it taut at the back here, and I'm pushing this forward and having it slightly relaxed here. And then I'm making sure it's smooth here. See how it's bubbling at the top? I'm not interested in that. It's a seam allowance. I'm only interested in that where it's the 5/8 of an inch. Now the reason that I'm just going to keep doing that, and the reason I'm going to do that is that this gives the sleeve this really nice kind of puffed, set in, tailored look. If you set in a sleeve where it's not relaxed on the sleeve and taut on the armhole edge, you get a much less tailored look. The sleeve will sit down flatter, whereas this will give you an ever so slight kind of puff off the edge of your shoulder. I couldn't think of the word. So there we go, and then that just fits in perfectly. So that has fit the whole way. You can see I've used a lot of pins. And I have not done the traditional, where you pin a couple of times, because I'm not interested in down here fitting or up here fitting. See, this is actually bobbly at the top. When I hold this together, you can see this is bobbling away. This is not flat against here. It is only flat along here where the seam allowance is. So then I'm going to stitch that along there, and then I will get that set in absolutely perfectly. And when I turn it through, and I've already done the other one so I can show you, when I turn it through, and I have not pressed this so you can just see what it's like straight off the sewing machine, this is the jacket here, it's nice and flat, and then this is the sleeve, and it does that beautiful little puff up bit there, and then that way you get a really kind of tailored set in look to your seams. So now I'm stitching in this seam, and as you can see I've got the sleeve on top and the jacket underneath, and I've got I've started stitching already along here, so I'm on the curved bit, and what I'm going to do is this is kind of hard to show you, let me lift this up, so I'm going to curve the fabric up as I sew, and what that does is that keeps this bottom bit taut, and the jacket bit taut and the shoulder bit relaxed, and I'm going to so I'm holding this up as I stitch like this. So it is actually, I'm literally curving it as I stitch, and I'm watching two things as I'm sewing. One, I'm looking to see that I'm still lining up with this 5/8 of an inch seam allowance here, because if I come in too close or out too far, I'm then going to be sewing it where the fabric is loose and too big. I want to sew it exactly on this 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'll keep going. There we go. So you can see I'm curving it. So you can't. I can hardly even see the presser foot because I'm going up. But I'm not actually interested in watching the needle up and going up and down. I'm only interested in watching, curving this and making sure I'm on that 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So the other part of this is when I get to the end, where at the end of the sleeve, is this bit here is curved around to the side. I do not try and stitch it straight like that. I don't try and move the fabric so that it's straight. I will keep it in a curve, and I'll only straighten it up before the presser foot in this section just here. So it's a really short section of the sleeve that I'm keeping flat. The rest of it I'm letting curve around naturally, and what that does again is stretch the fibres so that the fibres are kind of going in the right place in order to get that loose for the sleeve, taut for the actual shoulder.